If you desperately need to learn some quotations for of mice and men, then this is the video for you. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to give you 10 good quality quotations that you will learn that will cover all of the main characters and all of the main themes that you may be asked to answer on in an exam like the Pearson Edexcel English Literature Paper 1. The modern prose is the part of the exam that students tend to get really stressed on because you're not allowed a clean copy of the text. It is a closed book exam. So the only quotations that you're going to have to go on are the ones you've remembered yourself from your own revision. So in this video, hopefully the quotations I'm going to give you on Of Mice and Men should help. Okay, 10 quotes in 10 minutes then. So the first one I would offer would be this one. Guys like us are the loneliest guys in the world. This is a George quotation, who is obviously the protector of the story. This is good for themes including friendship, loneliness, isolation. These are all themes that have come up in recent years. And from a context point of view, you've obviously got itinerant workers, ranch workers in 1930s America, the Great Depression, often traveling alone, working temporary jobs, usually traveling in isolation. This is Steinbeck highlighting the highly unusual nature of George and Lenny's companionship against the backdrop of that context. Guys like us are the loneliest guys in the world. Next quotation. I got you to look after me and you got me to look after you. This is a Lenny quotation. Now again, this could be one that you might paraphrase. I got you and you got me would probably be acceptable if you wrote that in an exam. Lenny is obviously the innocent burden to George. Again, quotation like this would work well for any themes along the lines of friendship, responsibility, loyalty. Those are all key themes or thematic questions, the centre of thematic questions that have come up in recent times. So anything to do with the context of the relationship, contrasting the loneliness of itinerant or migrant workers, anything to do with how their relationship was rather unusual for the time, that would be a useful context point to make. Next one. Live off the fat of the land, or rabbits. I often say to my students, if you can remember a one-word quotation, and rabbits is a good example of a one-word quotation, that works well for a whole host of things. That could work well for a Lenny question, it could work well for a George question, it could work well for anything to do with the theme of dreams, hopes, the American dream in terms of entering into context, ambition. So again, context matter on this would be the Great Depression. The concept of owning land was rather remote to most people of this time and era. So owning land symbolizing ultimate independence, security, this dream, the American dream that anyone could be the master of all they survey, represents the ordinary but at this time desperate aspirations of Americans who had been stripped of their own choice of life, their own agency in life by the economic collapse, the economic landscape of the times. Live off the fat of the land, rabbits. Next quotation, and forgive my error here, that needs to be removed. This is a Candy quote. When they can me here, I wished somebody'd shoot me. So this links earlier to his dog being shot. Spoiler alert, sorry about that if you've not already read it. Candy is the aging worker, he's the injured worker, he only has one hand obviously. So anything to do with a Candy quote, a Candy question, or if this was a question to do with age or weakness or loneliness or even mercy, this quotation would work quite well. From a context point of view, there was no welfare system in the US at the time, so if you were old and you were unable to work, there was no welfare or pension system for you in 1930s America. So without a social safety net, many older people were left terrified of becoming physically useless and subsequently destitute. Obviously, Candy sits outside of that slightly because he did have his money in form of compensation for his hand injury, and he was trying to organise his retirement planning with Lenny and George. But when they can me here, I wish somebody had shoot me. At that point, his future was looking rather futile. Next quotation is a crux one. A guy goes nuts if he ain't got nobody. So crux being the black segregated outcast. So this would be good for a crux question. If it was a theme question again on loneliness or racial isolation or a theme question on companionship or the absence of it, this would work quite well. From a context point of view, anything to do with crux, you can link racial segregation. It was legal and socially widespread in 1930s America. Crux was physically excluded away from the bunkhouse in the harness room because of his race, an isolation that threatened to destroy his psychological sanity entirely. Next quotation would be Curly's wife. I could get you strung up on a tree so easy it ain't even funny. Now this is Curly's wife talking to Crux. So again, there's a link here between racism and prejudice. You could also use it for anything to do with power, or it could be an insight into Curly's wife characterization. But again, linking to context, lynching of black Americans was a horrific, pervasive threat in the 30s. Despite being deeply marginalized as a woman herself, Curly's wife can still exercise life or death power over Crux by weaponizing the brutal racial inequality. I could get you strung up on a tree so easy it ain't even funny. Now, Curly's wife, this is another quotation, seems like they ain't none of them cares how I gotta live. So this is Curly's wife talking about her loneliness. Criticality, you might be talking about how we empathize with Curly and how she's not always necessarily viewed through the flirtatious lens. She is a nameless possession. We never lose sight of the fact that she doesn't have a name. We don't know what she's called. So if this was a Curly's wife question, that's a good quotation. If it's a thematic question to do with loneliness, dreams, maybe gender inequality, to talk about how women in the 1930s were largely defined by marriage. They severely lacked independence, physically representing lack of identity and independence in society at that time. Seems like they ain't, none of them cares how I gotta live. Next quotation. This is about Curly, so this isn't what Curly says, but if this was a Curly question, Curly's like a lot of little guys. He hates big guys. This is a good quotation to encapsulate character of Curly, having a chip on his shoulder, about being physically smaller than many of the guys on the ranch. He is insecure, he's an aggressor, so if that was a Curly question, that's a good quote about him. If it's a thematic question to do with masculinity or insecurity or violence, this quotation would work well as well. So traditional ideas of masculinity rigidly encourage men to prove themselves physically as providers or protectors. Context was also during economically uncertain times when men felt stripped of maybe economical power. Physical prowess, physical violence became almost the currency to prove their worth. How are we doing? Nearly there. Slim. His authority was so great that his word was taken on any subject, or he was also referred to as the prince of the ranch, remember. So this would be a good quotation to show Slim as an authority figure. Thematic links, anything to do with leadership, wisdom, respect, again, authority. Here, from a context point of view, Slim is presenting a rare model of masculinity in a society in the 30s obsessed with inherited wealth or violence or masculinity. His authority was quiet. It was from lived experience. It was unmatched in terms of physical competence. His authority was so great that his word was taken on any subject. A Carlson quote. Carlson can and has come up as a character question. Now what the hell you suppose is eating them two guys? He's questioning of George and Lenny. He's the voice of apathetic society. He doesn't typically get involved too much in the story other than when he shoots Candy's dog. From a thematic point of view, society, lack of empathy for people's plight, emotional disconnect, the fact he is able to euthanize Candy's dog so easily, the fact he has little empathy with other people around him. So this is, from a context point of view, Steinbeck critiquing society that has become very cold, limited emotional connection. Carlson cannot understand the depth of George's grief when he's dispatched Lenny. The brutal landscape has eradicated his capacity for empathy. Obviously, they're not the only quotations. There are countless you could choose from, and obviously the ones you've been taught and maybe told to revise and memorize by your teacher are the ones that you should prioritize. But I would say they are 10 good quality quotes that can be adapted for any character or many thematic-based questions on this novella. I hope this video has been useful to you. If your memory is anything like mine, then you may not even remember all 10. But even if you remember 4 or 5 of those quotations, that will put you ahead of 80 or 90% of the students answering this paper. It's also important to say that paraphrasing is acceptable. Even if you can't remember the word perfectly, if you give the general gist of the quotation, you will get credit for understanding. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. Give the video a like if you've enjoyed the content or you found it useful, and please share it amongst your friends. Hit the bell notification for any future content that I release, or click on these linked videos that I've made on other content across the IGCSE language or IGCSE literature papers that should help you as well. Good luck everybody, and see you next time.